How to set up and use TraceX with Renesas Synergy. This video will illustrate the steps required to use the TraceX real-time event analysis tool for Renesas Synergy. Getting a detailed view of the behavior of embedded application software becomes crucial not just for debugging, but also for performance optimization. Fortunately, Renesas Synergy includes excellent tools that enable developers to gain valuable insight into the operation of their system. Foremost amongst these tools is TraceX, which provides a graphical view of application and system activity over time. Think of it as a logic analyzer view for software. Like all of Synergy, TraceX is tightly integrated with the rest of the Synergy platform and is easy to set up and use. In this video, you will see just how easy it is to set up TraceX on the Renesas Synergy platform. You can download TraceX for Synergy from the Synergy gallery. The link is available in the description below. Let's assume, for the sake of time, that you already have an existing ThreadX-based project and want to add TraceX Event Trace capability to it. ThreadX actually already includes Event Trace. We simply have to enable it. The first thing we need to do is open the project. For this example, we're using IAR's Embedded Workbench for Synergy. You can download IAR's Embedded Workbench for Synergy from the Synergy gallery. To open the project, I'll double-click on the Embedded Workbench for Synergy workspace that contains our existing project, which will launch Embedded Workbench for Synergy with ours as the active project. To enable TraceX support, there is very little that we need to do, thanks to the power of the Synergy configurator. You can download Synergy configurator from the Synergy gallery. The configurator generates all the startup and initialization code needed based on your selections in the configurator menus. To start the configurator, click on the blue Synergy configurator icon on the Embedded Workbench for Synergy menu bar at the top. The configurator enables you to specify all aspects of your application setup, including clocks, pins, BSP, and more. In this example, we're going to enable Event Trace in the ThreadX thread properties, which is the thread that sets up all the optional features of ThreadX. To access those properties, we first click on the Threads tab to view all the threads in our application. At the top left, you'll see a window for threads. All application and system threads are shown. To change the settings for any of them, we'll simply click the one we want to change. In this case, it's the HAL/common thread, because what we're going to do is add an application-wide option, not something that just one particular thread can use. So we select HAL/common from the threads list. You'll see all the HAL and common threads in the system. Now, if you haven't already added a ThreadX source thread, it's easy to add that now. Simply select New Stack, Framework, RTOS, ThreadX Source. Now select the ThreadX source thread, which will bring its properties into view in the lower left window. In the properties, we'll make the only change we need in order to add Event Trace support for this build of ThreadX. Scroll down a bit to the Event Trace property and set it to Enabled. Below this, you'll see the default name and default size of the trace buffer. The trace buffer is circular, so the size you allocate determines how many, n, of the most recent events will fit. Each event occupies 32 bytes, plus there is a header of about 64 bytes. So a 64K buffer would hold approximately 2,000 events. Regardless of the size you allocate here, the buffer will always contain the last n events. That's it for the configurator. The configurator will generate all the detailed function calls and memory allocation that are needed to enable ThreadX Event Trace. To do so, we click the Generate Project Content button. As our program runs, ThreadX will record each event into the buffer. At any time, we can upload the contents of the buffer to the host system, where TraceX will analyze the data. A common time to do this is at a breakpoint. IAR Embedded Workbench enables us to add a macro function to a breakpoint that can be executed each time the breakpoint is hit. We have just such a macro called save_trace_buffer, which automatically performs a memory save operation of the trace buffer data to a host file called trace.trx. In this way, at any breakpoint, we can view the trace buffer by launching TraceX without having to worry about uploading the data manually. Let's see how to add this macro to a breakpoint. First, we'll register the macro in the project options for the debugger. To do so, select Project Options Debugger. Next, type $PROJ_dir$trace_buffer.mac in the Actions window. The macro is now ready for use by the debugger. We'll see how to use it in a minute. But first, we have to add a breakpoint. We'll add one at the end of the thread_d of our example. Once I add a breakpoint, I can right-click on that line to get a menu that includes Edit Breakpoint. Let's do that and select Edit Breakpoint. Here, we see several options for the breakpoint. We'll enter the name of the macro function in the Action field, save_trace_buffer. This is an action that will be performed each time the breakpoint is hit. Notice also that we could opt for the macro to be run only on every nth hit by entering an appropriate skip count, but we'll leave it at 0, so we'll run the macro every time. Next, once we hit the breakpoint, we'll want to launch TraceX. This is done through the Tools menu and is already set up by default. Let's check the settings that will control the launch and file access. We'll select Tools, then Configure Tools. Your settings should look like this. If not, then change them to match, or refer to the location where you've installed TraceX, which will be as shown if you installed TraceX to the default location. In this example, we're using trace.trx as the name of the uploaded trace buffer file we want TraceX to open. Anytime we wish to launch TraceX and view the latest uploaded trace buffer, we simply select Tools, then TraceX. It's as simple as that. Okay, now we're all set up. We've enabled Event Trace in ThreadX. We've added a macro to upload the trace buffer at a breakpoint, and we've enabled TraceX Launch from the Embedded Workbench for Synergy Tools menu. Now we're ready to see how this all works. To run our example, we'll select the green triangle Download and Debug button, which will also perform an automatic rebuild if we've changed anything in the project, which we have, as you can see from the red asterisks next to the changed files. Our program has been rebuilt, downloaded, and has run to main, as we've told it to. Next, we'll let it run until it hits the breakpoint we set. Now that we've hit the breakpoint, our trace buffer will be uploaded, and will be ready to view through TraceX. So let's launch TraceX and see. And here is our TraceX view. Note that our program has barely started, so there is minimal information to see. If we like, we can select Go several more times, or disable the breakpoint and let it run for as long as we like, then re-enable the breakpoint. Either way, we can gather as much program activity in the trace buffer as we like. I'll disable the breakpoint, let it run, then re-enable it, and see what TraceX shows us as a result. So there it is, everything you needed to do to get Event Trace enabled and to launch TraceX from Embedded Workbench for Synergy. Companies developing embedded products face challenges of time to market and fiercely competitive products. They need to be able to develop new products quickly and to make sure they perform well. Performance analysis tools such as TraceX must be factored into the choice of the embedded platform. The level of integration between these tools plays a role in how easy they are to use and how efficient they are. Renesas Synergy includes TraceX and all the other software developers need to bring new products to market and to make those products successful. Developers can use TraceX to optimize their products and make them more competitive. Unlimited licenses to TraceX are included with the Renesas Synergy platform. Sign up on the gallery to download and test drive its capabilities today.